Hi everyone, and welcome to Headlines, where we run out the week's biggest news stories for all of you. Last week, we looked at one side of COVID 19, the side that involved governmental reactions, the cancellation of major world events, and the impact on the entertainers. A quick update for all of you. According to the Johns Hopkins University, the number of infected individuals has almost crossed 2 million. Today, let's look at the second side of the coronavirus, its impact on the world economy, which has just bungee jumped off the Eiffel Tower. In the United States, as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, the economy is now widely expected to shrink by a quarter. That's as much as during the Great Depression. But it took 4 years for the economy to dwindle after 1929. Estimates say that the coronavirus will cripple the US economy in just 3 months. At the beginning of April, unemployment in the USA was at a record high of 13%. That's nearly 45 million people, according to the Foreign Policy magazine. Michigan economics professor Justin Wolfers pointed out that unemployment is rising at nearly 0.5% per day and can hit 30% by summer. Italy, the worst hit country in Europe with nearly 150,000 cases, makes 50% of its revenue from tourism. They've lost nearly 2 billion euros as a result of this, as tourism rates are at an all-time low. Germany's GDP is predicted to fall by more than that of the United States, dragged down by its dependence on exports. In China, the latest official figures show that unemployment is at 6.2%, the highest number since 1990. As many as 205 million migrant workers were furloughed, more than a quarter of the Chinese workforce, according to The Economist. In India, a significant amount of damage was dealt to the economy after the 21-day shutdown, which has now been extended by another 2 weeks. Of India's 471 million strong workforce, only 19% are covered by Social Security, and at least 100 million are migrant workers. Many of them have been sent back to their villages. Finally, Hong Kong. Hong Kong's finance chief stated that the economic impact of the coronavirus has been bigger than when SARS hit in 2003 and warned that the jobless rate would surge. Among the hardest hit industries in Hong Kong are the aviation, retail, and tourism sectors, which recorded a 10-year high unemployment rate of 6.1%, while the rate in the construction sector was 6.8%. What does this mean for all of us teens? First, our future might be at risk. As salaries dwindle and unemployment skyrockets, there's a chance that our parents might lose their work. And even though it is extreme, it isn't impossible. Second, prospective jobs that we might be thinking about in the future might no longer be available, or industries that we want to work in will take a much longer time to kickstart after this economic crisis. Luckily, though, there is hope. The efforts that are being made to mitigate the economic crisis are unprecedented. In the United States, a stimulus package to kickstart employment again and improve the economy has been drafted up by Congress, and it is the largest in the country's history. In Germany, all limits on public debt, which is the amount a country owes to another lender, have been removed. This allows the government to spend more in other sectors like healthcare and employment. In Hong Kong, charities such as the Oxfam Group have been actively calling for the government to provide cash handouts for those who have lost their jobs due to COVID-19. The Hong Kong government has also announced that they have offset $80 billion for unemployment relief, which will be used to pay sacked workers 50% of their salaries for half a year. Ultimately, the world as a whole is witnessing the largest combined economic effort to mitigate the crisis of the coronavirus. Who knows? After the coronavirus boils down, a whole host of new job opportunities in new sectors might spring up too. Next to the USA. Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the Democratic presidential race, paving the way for Joe Biden's nomination. Sanders, although a strong candidate who won support in the first 3 states he visited in February, solemnly said on the 8th of April that, quote, "We are 300 delegates behind VP Biden and the path towards victory is virtually impossible." Sanders stated his support for Joe Biden and urged his voter base to work with the prospective nominee to end the reign of President Trump. Now, Biden will most likely face off with President Trump in November this year during the official elections. I guess Bernie didn't really feel the burn. Moving on to the UK. Our favorite Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, was discharged from the hospital Sunday morning after being present for nearly a week. He was taken to St. Thomas's Hospital last Sunday after complaining about a cough and a fever and was tested positive for the coronavirus. Johnson acknowledged how tough it would be not to go out when, quote, "the whole natural world seems at its loveliest." Although that statement is kind, it probably has Greta Thunberg shaking. Bojo will continue his recovery as his medical team has advised him not to return to work just yet. But he will probably be paranoid about catching the virus again once he gets better. I reckon the first thing on his agenda when he gets back to 10 Downing Street would be to figure out a better washing hands song, since clearly Happy Birthday is now going to be too short in his mind. Maybe he'll go for the Macarena this time. South Korea held their 21st legislative elections on the 15th of April. They were the only country to hold elections on the planned date. Other countries, including the USA, have postponed all their elections to a later date due to COVID 19. South Korea had a staggered voting process. People confirmed with COVID 19 arrived at voting booths early. This election was no small one. Voter turnout was at 66.2%, one of the biggest elections in the history of the country, rivaled only by the 1992 elections. The country can afford such a large scale election in part because the nation is not under any sort of strict lockdown. Instead, it has chosen stringent testing, contact tracing, and isolation, and most of the public have complied with social distancing voluntarily. The ruling party, headed by Moon Jae-in, won in a landslide victory. Sources say that this is most likely because of his response to the coronavirus outbreak in South Korea, which has primarily been very successful. African students and expats in China are reportedly being evicted from their own houses and are being mistreated over the fear that they are carriers of COVID 19. Governments of the African Union have sent letters to the Chinese government stating that the actions of Chinese individuals in discriminating against Africans was an act of scapegoating and unfairly put the blame on African individuals. The Chinese government is considering sending diplomats to have discussions with the Kenyan and Nigerian governments, but are still questioning whether or not this is feasible due to the virus. And finally, our last story today is on music. To be precise, what exactly people are listening to right now. Kids Bop, a group of musically talented children who cover famous charting songs, have seen an unprecedented spike in their streams. Good news for them after Kids Bop Karen really dragged them down. Meanwhile, Bodak Yellow artist Cardi B has been dropping in her streams. She mustn't really be liking it like that. Cardi B isn't the only artist to see streams dipping. Almost all artists in the pop and Latin genres, two of the biggest stream genres right now, have also seen a dip in streams. According to Quartz magazine, this is because such music is oftentimes social or commute-based, played at coffee shops, gyms, and restaurants or as people travel. As most shops close down and people travel less, this genre of music is becoming less listened to, while more unorthodox and less popular forms of music such as classical, folk, and children are on the rise. That's all for this week. I'll see you next time on Headlines.